My goodness. Good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is for you. I hope you're having a fantastic day. My name is Zach Schomler. This is Strong Opinion Sports, and joining me is my good friend, Nathan. Nathan, how are you, man?
I'm great. Thought I had my headset on backwards. It felt a little funny, but we are good to go.
We've all done that where you do it. I always look to the right ear for that little R, but if you don't see it,
Yep.
you're like, why does this feel wrong and not right on my head?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think we're good though. We got it.
Yeah, it feels right. Like I saw you like looking, thinking, checking, testing, asking your brain how it feels.
Yeah, no, we're all kinds of good now. We got it figured out.
How was Phoenix, man?
Ah, man, Phoenix was incredible. We had a suite on the 16th green, where I spent probably 97.8% of my time. Drinks, food, good people. It was honestly so much fun. And for those of you that don't know, I used to work in golf. I worked for an agency that hosted PGA Tour events along the West Coast. So I've been to and seen a lot of PGA Tour events. I'd never been to Waste Management, and the size, the scale, the fans, the fanfare, the gravitas, everything was so much bigger. And there's a reason it's the best tournament in golf. It was so spectacular.
Would you say that's the biggest thing in the world for golf?
I mean, outside of the majors, outside of, the Masters, outside of, the Open at the Old Course, outside of the US Open at Pebble, like that is as big as it gets.
Yeah, as you can tell, I know nothing about golf. Like, I've heard of there's a Augusta. I know that. I've heard of that before. That's a big
Yep.
deal, I think.
Yep. Very, very big. Actually, it's funny enough. I got my my Masters shirt on right now.
How was the food? I don't know what you were drinking. We can talk about that next. But how was the food down in Phoenix?
Food was pretty good. There was a lot of different options, throughout the hospitality area, which always helps in those kind of situations. Yeah, I mean, there was different forms of beef, different forms of chicken, different vegetarian options for those who were vegetarian. Definitely not me. Appetizer type stuff, samosas, crab cakes. Like, I mean, it was truly an elite experience. I mean, the boxes run you a pretty penny, so they better be giving you good food.
Yeah, that was my question, right? Because I have been to a lot of NFL and football events.
Mm-hmm.
The box food is good. You're like, oh, it hits different. You're like, it feels free, even though it's not. It feels really good. You're like, ah.
I mean, it was totally free for me.
Yeah, that's right. If you're oppressed, I never paid. You know what I mean? Like,
I didn't have to pay for
someone's
a ticket.
We've never paid.
I was blessed by my fiance. They happened to have an available ticket for her company in their box, and so I got super duper lucky that it worked out, and even luckier that I got to go for 2 days. It was really special.
Yeah. I watched the Super Bowl this weekend. My food of choice was wings. We still have many leftover wings, like too many. It's kind of a problem. Yeah. It's a good problem to have, though. And then, as you know, Coke Zero, our drink of choice, our crazy. Amen. Whoa, slow down over there, guys. As if it's like we're like in Provo and we're like, whoa, guys, this is the big special drink. I've been watching Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, and it's like an incredible, really interesting show. If you haven't watched it, you and your lady should watch it. It's such a good show to watch with your partner. It's hilarious and creates such good conversations. It's just a wild show.
Is it like a Sister Wives type show?
No, okay. It's about Mormon influencing wives, like influencer wives.
Okay, so it's not like the Mormon Sister Wives type joint.
Well, there was like a swinging scandal. It's really fascinating, dude. Like it's so good. I mean, it's horrible. And honestly, for the first couple episodes, I had to watch one and then take a break for a couple days, then watch the next one because it's so bad, like toxic and dramatic and bad. And then by the end, you're like, keep them coming. I can't. I'm like, I need it directly into my veins. Like inject this like straight to. I need all of it as much as possible, as quickly as possible. Guilty
pleasure here, like Selling Sunsets, selling the OC. It's the same deal. It's just so much drama. It almost makes you kind of sick. You're like, this is just these people are mean. They're nasty to each other. Like, who actively goes out and does this? But
guilty. Molly's got a great line. She goes, "With friends like these, who needs enemies?"
You're like, my goodness, because your friends are your enemies.
Yeah, it's how watching that show, it feels that way. Okay, well, I feel caught up. How was the Super Bowl? Like, I know you watched it. What'd you make of it? Philly dominated. How'd you feel about the big game?
Yeah, I think two things happened in that game, and I think I was right about one thing, and I was wrong about the other. What was I right about? I was right about the Philadelphia Eagles defensive line being the game changer for the Super Bowl, right? So if they can get Mahomes off his spot, if they can generate sacks and turnovers, the Eagles are gonna win the football game, right? And that's exactly what happened. That's the story, right? They only rushed 4 all game. They were able to get to Pat, no problem. What I was wrong about, the Chiefs being able to kind of flip the switch, respond, and keep the game close. I said that the Chiefs don't get blown out, and they got that ass whooped. They got completely blown out. There was nothing that they could do. I just not only was the D line getting pressure, but I felt like their rush integrity was incredible the entire night. Getting upfield, making Mahomes feel like he has that space to step up into the pocket, and then just cinching the vice and absolutely closing it down. That made Pat uncomfortable the entire game. He's a guy that likes to step up, usually finds, Kelsey or Juju over the middle, things like that, completely taken away from him on top of just not being able to have time in general. Again, more than anything, that rush integrity. And then the guys on the back end, Cooper DeJean, Brown, I've heard it pronounced a couple different ways. Those guys capitalizing on the pressure that the defensive line created. It was just a masterclass on that defensive side of the football.
Yeah, no, it was what'd you make of Jalen Hurts getting MVP? Because you can't give it to a whole position group, right? You can't give it to the entire front seven of Philadelphia. But like that's what won the game. Like that was the most valuable part of the Eagles roster was their front seven. I know you give it to Jalen because there's no obvious single standout, but what'd you make of that decision there?
Yeah, I mean, 3 total touchdowns. He was 17 for 22. He only had one bad ball all game, and that was just a miscommunication between him and AJ Brown. Other than that, he was putting the ball on the absolute money. What I love to see is how effective he was using his legs again. I feel like that was something that we saw maybe at times, but we saw it inconsistently this year. The moment you thought that the Chiefs were going to get to him, the moment that you thought that the Chiefs maybe are going to get their sack and turn this game around, he found his way out. And he usually found it going straight up the middle. And then the times he didn't, he was able to get outside the pocket and show us that he can still throw on the run. I think that this should comfortably put to bed any questions about the health of his arm, which I even had going into this very game. Again, just excellent to see Jalen Hurts step up in that big moment. And I think more than worthy of that Super Bowl MVP. Again, defensive line played great. But what he did on the offense, while the Chiefs completely took away Saquon Barkley had 20 plus carries and didn't even cross 60 yards. They were trying to get him going. They were trying to get him to bust one. But the Chiefs said he is not going to beat us. And if there is something to tip the cap, to the Chiefs, it's, hey, you played Saquon Barkley well, but you did nothing else well the rest of the game.
Well, I'll say too, the game changer on offense was Jalen Hurts' ability to connect on deep shots downfield, whether it's Jahan Dotson or AJ Brown or that beautiful long touchdown to Devontae Smith. Like he just found a way to
on the money.
Like I just really, that's on the offensive side of the football. That made the difference for Philly. And I thought they even kind of got robbed of one. There was that early 4th down throw that got called back for offensive pass interference. And it's like, come on now. Like that's not offensive pass interference. I don't know what we're watching here.
It was,
I thought,
I agree with it during the replay, but the ref seeing it on the field, the hand did go right into the face mask. So I can understand it, but yeah, I agree with it.
I think the problem with that call is the context of it, the narrative about, Kansas City, that all they do is get help from the refs all the time. Pretty rough way to start the game. It's a huge momentum shift for Philly. It frankly didn't matter by the 4th quarter. Like the game was it didn't have any effect on the outcome of the game really, but it could have. And I remember thinking like, oh, here we go. Like we're going to have a bunch of conspiracy theorists talking about how Kansas City always gets help from the refs. And again, it was a non-factor, but I did feel like they kind of got robbed of it. At minimum, an awesome completion down the sideline on 4th and 2, if not ultimately points for Philly.
I believe the refs did give that call back almost the very next drive. There was another I can't remember what the call was, but it was another questionable. Like, what was that? I can't even remember what the call was. But it was the second one, and Brady at the same time said, yeah, I don't really like that one either. So you had 2 calls. And again, fortunately, they went tit for tat on that one, so there couldn't be any conversation. But yeah, those are, plays that changed the course of the game. One was a fourth down for the Eagles. One was a big third down for the Chiefs to kind of get their offense going. I don't think that would have saved them for the rest of the game. Let's be clear. But yeah, interesting. It was interesting.
I was really, really happy for Jalen Hurts as far as like his journey is crazy. The guy who got benched at Alabama ultimately becoming the Super Bowl MVP. You know, I mean, like, that's a crazy story. People still remember him. People still hold that against him that he got benched for Tua and ultimately had to transfer out of Alabama to become a starting quarterback. Like people still, I think you'll notice this in your everyday life too. People have a hard time changing their view of you. They see one version of you, and if you make a bunch of changes, it's really hard for people to reframe the way they see you. That's happened to Jalen Hurts for sure. And I think now there's no question like, hey, he made every big throw. His only bad ball, you referenced one bad throw in that game. It's that ball he left inside. He got kind of hit as he threw, got picked off down the sideline of the 2-yard line. But to have a whole Super Bowl game where you got basically one bad decision, one bad throw the entire game, and ultimately you're hoisting an MVP trophy of the Super Bowl, that's a cool journey. And I love Jalen and find him really likable. What'd you make of him and the storyline and the narrative and his journey from where he was to where he is now?
I think it's a bogus narrative, if we're being honest. It's one that I never bought into. Did he get benched at halftime? Yes, but he's a college quarterback and he was still developing. He went to Oklahoma and
Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks because Prize Picks puts their members first. So all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Prize Picks now offers MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Download the app today and use code CLNS for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use code CLNS for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game.
he got drafted at the top of the second round. He ends up starting for the Eagles. First year, second year makes it to the playoffs. Third year gets to the Super Bowl. They fall short last year, and then this year they're back in the Super Bowl. Like, I don't know why we're still trying to pull this pity story of him and his situation when he was at Alabama. It's not like he got replaced by a scrub. It's not like he got replaced by a guy who's not starting. Like, Tua's a starting quarterback in the NFL and a high caliber starting quarterback. I'm tired of the whole, oh, he was benched. Everybody, thought he wasn't very good and they gave up on him, blah, blah, blah. That happened one time and again, it was Tua. It's not just some scrub guy. So let's get past all this. Oh, woe was me, Jalen Hurts. Dude's handsome. Dude's good at football. He's got a wonderful girlfriend. Like, let's stop trying to act like this guy doesn't have it. He's got all that in a bag of chips. Okay.
Yeah, he's the man.
And if any criticism I had, it was about his ability to throw the football due to injury, not even due to his inability to read a defense or his inability to know how to throw a football. I said, maybe that shoulder's not healthy. Turns out it is. Anyways, sorry to kind of go on a little rant there, but I don't buy that whole, oh, discarded at Alabama, never given a shot. What are you talking about?
I still think it's cool though, because I know a lot of people have a hard time. They really can't change their opinion of him. And I think Jalen, every year I've watched him play football since that first year at Alabama, he's gotten better and better and better and better. His work ethic is clearly incredible, because to grow as much as he has, as progressively as he has, every single year gets a little bit better. I just really admire Jalen Hurts. He's an awesome leader. He's the kind of guy you want to follow. I just love it. I'm really happy for him to have found success and won a Super Bowl. I can't think of another guy who is more deserving from a work ethic standpoint, from a leadership standpoint. He's the face of the Philadelphia Eagles. And you know what? One thing you can't say about Jalen, there's not a single bad thing you can say about him from a leadership standpoint, from organizational standpoint. Like, he does all the little things incredibly well. And I love him. I think he's a role model that doesn't get enough credit, to be totally honest.
Yeah, absolutely. He's great in front of the mic. He's always got something kind of poetic and prophetic to say for him and his team. Love that even in that interview that they were trying to talk about him and what it meant for him. And he said, hey, like, it's still about the team, made some nice additions, glory to God, all that stuff, right? He's never misstepping what to say. And I think that, again, him giving that credit back to the team, I thought was great. And again, I just wanted to go back to Jalen Hurts in 2016. He also replaced somebody named Blake Barnett. And I know that you remember Blake Barnett.
Yeah.
And that was after the first game. Right. So think about that. He also replaced somebody, and it was after one game. So let's just get rid of that narrative for Jalen Hurts once and for all.
Yeah, the former Elite 11 MVP, Blake Barnett.
Yes.
Another guy who won a Super Bowl is Saquon Barkley. And I'm just happy for
Saquon.
Former New York Giant, Saquon Barkley gets out of this horrible organization and gets to the promised land and finds success. You got to be happy for a guy like that who does that and has that journey.
Kind of like the running back version of Matt Stafford. Granted, the situations were very different, trading versus free agency, but still, there's evidence where you can be an elite player, but if you are in a system of dysfunction, it's going to impact your ability. Now, again, both of those guys between, Saquon and Matt Stafford put up crazy numbers, but it never produced anything in the postseason. You get those guys on some rosters that have some excellent coaching, that have solid guys around them, and you start to see how much of an impact their abilities truly have. Again, it wasn't, pretty for Saquon in the game, but I think Saquon still played his role. He helped keep the defense honest, keeping the box heavy and allowing guys like Devontae Smith, allowing guys like A.J. Brown to get open.
I can't think of a better place Saquon Barkley could have gone. I mean, I think there are, like, a fun conversation would be him on the 49ers is interesting. I think Detroit with Saquon Barkley is really fascinating because the offensive line talent there, Green Bay could have used him. But those are the only other three teams I even can imagine, like, in my head. I'm like, or the Chargers with Herbert and Harbaugh would have been fun. Yeah. But the truth is, there wasn't a better place for him to go find success than behind that Philadelphia Eagles offensive line. It was a perfect fit, match made in heaven. And I'm so happy for the way it worked out. And to be honest, like, we talk about, I think part of the conversation we should have later is the potential three-peat for Kansas City that didn't happen. But now we're looking at Philly and going, hey, they got all the guys. They're young. They got a whole group of guys they're going to have together for a while. Part. Like, is three-peat on the table for this team? Because this team is loaded, and they're going to still be really good next year, too.
Yeah, that's the scary part, is they're young. Not a lot of guys are incredibly expensive on that team yet. So they might have another year or two of some serious football. They were also blessed this year in the sense that they stayed very healthy. Yeah. Nothing happened to Saquon. Did Jalen have that concussion? Yeah, but large in part, that offensive line stayed intact. And what a massive offensive line that is. Defensive line, outside of Brandon Graham, who ended up, making his way back to the Super Bowl. He was still, like, that defensive line was still intact. Their back end compared to 2022, number one, was healthy and just better. So this team that we saw in 2022 was just this team that we saw this year was just miles better than the team that we saw in 23 or 22. You get what I'm saying. I'm messing up the years, but you guys know what I'm saying. Stay out of the comments.
What I want to kind of ask you about and talk about a little bit is Patrick Mahomes, because you see a lot of celebrating. Hey, that people are a lot of people are like America seems really happy that Patrick Mahomes lost and Kansas City lost. And I was always open to the idea of them winning a third Super Bowl in a row. It would have been kind of cool and historic. What really bothers me, and even people I know saying, "Oh, I hate that cocky Patrick Mahomes." I'm like, I've never got the sense that he's like some cocky, arrogant. I think he's confident. I think you have to be a quarterback, but I've never understood. The more Mahomes has won, the more people have just assumed and called him cocky. And I just don't. I think he's actually a really good leader. He's the most talented quarterback I've ever seen in my entire life. I just think the pendulum has swung too far the other way, where he used to be this new darling on the block, and now he's won for so long people are sick of him. But let's not twist it to where it's not. He's not a bad guy. He's not irresponsible. He's not cocky. He's not a leadership or a locker room problem. And it's so weird to me to see people can't just be happy for Philly, and they can't just celebrate Kansas City's losing. They also then have to twist the knife even further and badmouth Patrick Mahomes. And I just find that weird. I just don't understand that. I know you've got a unique perspective on Patrick Mahomes. What do you make of what I just said?
Yeah, I mean, some people can't separate the game from the individuals. And when it ultimately comes time for their team to win, they do want to twist the knife because they're so upset with seeing this team who beat them a couple years ago in the Super Bowl finally lose, right? That's the big thing is Kansas City finally lost. You think about, the old Patriots teams. People celebrated when Tom Brady lost. People talked trash about him and Giselle when Brady lost. People talked about Brady and his kids. People talked about, the quote unquote white receivers, right? Like it's anytime there's greatness, there's going to be haters, right? And that's what makes, these teams so great is because they have this Teflon skin about them. And Pat certainly has that. It's never bothered him. And the rest of the team has it. And that's why they don't get flapped or flustered by those sort of things. I think it is cheap, but I also think that's part of sports and that's part of the new media. I don't agree with it and what you see on social media post game, but at the end of the day, Chiefs got their ass whooped and Philly deserves to celebrate that. When you start to get a little personal, right? When you start talking about people's friends and family members and dragging that into it, I think that crosses a line. But hey, anything about that player and their performance in the game is fair game. If you want to talk about whooping their ass and they didn't show up, I mean, you 100% deserve to do that. But start dragging in family. I think that's where a line in general is crossed. But I mean, again, Philly went in there and whooped ass. If you want to say anything about it, talk to them on the field next year.
Yeah, I just don't relate to the haters. I've always admired people that are successful at a high level. Like Tom Brady was my role model as a kid. I wanted to emulate him. I try to do that every day at my job and everything I do. I look up to Brady and go, man, his work ethic, his preparedness, I guess the word is preparation actually. Like the way he approached being a professional, I admire and look up to. I feel the same way about Patrick Mahomes. He prepares differently. He prepares for different arm angles. He prepares from throwing from different angles. He studies things other guys don't do. He works his butt off. And when he wins, he's earned it. And I don't know why that narrative went away. I think it's because of the refs. And there's this perception that the refs always help Kansas City. That's just not true in my opinion. But I think he's earned his success. And I just don't relate to people that are bored of him succeeding or tired of him doing well and want to see him fail. I just cannot relate to that because I just admire people that clearly put in a ton of work to be special and different and great. And that's what Patrick Mahomes is as a quarterback.
Yeah, and he is. And you think about these teams that he's taken to the Super Bowl. He's taken one that's been very offensive, high powered. He's taken one that's been very defense heavy with not as many offensive weapons. And his ability, I think, in his growth to, go from the guy throwing 50 touchdowns to a guy that's only throwing 20 some odd touchdowns. And I think Pat would agree that this wasn't his best year in it as a whole. I think anyone will tell you that. And I think he'll tell you that as well. But at the end of the day, in his 8 years as a starter, he's either going to the Super Bowl or losing in the AFC Championship.
Yeah.
Or 7 years as a starter, eight, whatever the number is. He lost to Brady, he lost to the Joe Burrow Bengals, and then he's lost a couple of Super Bowls. I mean, what are you going to do? Like that is an incredible amount of success to sustain. And hear me out. This is going to be tinfoil hat, next level brain thinking. Not many people are going to understand where I'm going with this. Kansas City Chiefs this coming year, right? Your season's really, really long when you make it to the Super Bowl. They are going to bounce themselves in the divisional round, get extra rest, come back with a new roster. 2027, they win the Super Bowl again.
Here's my question. What do you do next? Because
if you're Kansas City,
yeah, they need a weapon, right? I mean, because
they don't really need a weapon. They just went to the Super Bowl with a few guys for the last 3 years in a row without an elite weapon. They went to the Super Bowl and they won two of them.
Don't you think that's a difference? Like a Tyreek Hill, the idea that comes to mind to me is Cooper Kupp. Like, does Cooper Kupp get this team a Super Bowl?
I don't think so at this point. No, I don't think he's the guy that gets them to a Super Bowl. Would he be a nice piece to have? For sure, but I look at the rest of that receiving core, and again, we know that that's not what Pat needs. He needs a big-bodied wide receiver one. And again, he played without Rashee Rice this year. Hollywood Brown didn't start playing until week 15, 16. Xavier Worthy wasn't, as good as he is until coming on late in the season. So I just think we need to slow down talking about like what's next for Kansas City. Maybe revamp the offensive line a little bit. If you can get an excellent wide receiver one, that's fantastic. But I think we need to slow down this. Oh, like this dynasty is completely over. They're over the edge. Like they're going to be completely fine next year. And I talk about them losing the divisional round in just to give themselves rest, right? Because they've been on this absolute tear of going on late into the season, but they're going to be just fine. I think people need to settle down on we don't know what they're going to. Are there a lot of free agents? Yes, but they've also got Brett Veach, a guy who's proven time and time and again that he can revamp the roster and get Mahomes what he needs to win at a high level.
I watched your cat in the background, just like, I don't know what she went, boom, she dropped. I'll put it on video. I should mark it 26 minutes in.
They've got one of those little flopping fish, and they brought it from the living room, and now they're having a grand old time.
Where do you want to go next with this conversation? Because I'm curious, the fallout of this loss for Kansas City. How does it reflect on them? How does it? I mean, I find myself alone in that my opinion hasn't changed. I admire them. I respect them. But I watched on Sunday as most of America was celebrating the downfall of Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes and really happy, as if they're villains, like really happy to see this team lose.
Yo, it's like they were murderers that just got finally sentenced to death row. Like that's how people were cheering. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. You better not succeed in America, because if you do it for too long, they're gonna hate you. It's funny. Yeah. It's funny how, but I feel like that attitude, by the way, mostly is in sports. Like you don't see that in other realms. I don't want to get political here or anything, but it's like, why is it that in sports specifically, if you're too good for too long, you have too much success for too long and make too much money, you're a villain? But in almost any other aspect, actors and musicians and like people celebrate. Funny enough, the only other example I can think of in entertainment where someone's really successful for a long time and people got tired of them is Travis Kelce's girlfriend, Taylor Swift.
I thought you were going to say Drake. Could have gone either way.
Oh, hey, fair enough. There's another example, but I mean, there's a lot there too. How was halftime? It was amazing, dude. I loved that halftime show so much.
I thought it was a great halftime show. Yeah. Some people felt a certain way about it. I thought it was a great show.
Dude, I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I remember like when that song came on. A minor, dude, it was amazing. It was so good.
It was awesome.
I don't know. Anything else you want to talk about regarding the Super Bowl?
No, I think both teams are going to continue to do great things. I'm excited for this Eagles roster to see what they do next year. There's a lot of chatter about who are the Lions going to be next year? Who are the Vikings going to be next year? Who else is at the top? How does Washington look next year? I think there's a lot of questions in the NFC, but I think the thing that we are for sure about is the Eagles are coming back. And then the AFC side, I think that picture is going to be a little bit different. What do the Bengals do on defense? Can they retain T. Higgins? And then I think about Lamar Jackson in another year where he kind of fell short. What do they look like? What do the Bills do to revamp? I'm more curious about the NFC than AFC. I think the AFC's teams are going to go up, and I think we're going to see a little bit more regression in the NFC. Only time will tell. But again, I think that the two teams to beat next year are still going to be Kansas City and Philly. What they do in the draft, we'll see. And I'm excited to start, officially digging into the draft order and who's available and what guys or what team need to get met and all that kind of stuff.
Are you ready to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy. They're dietitian approved and ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes so you can fuel right and feel great no matter what life throws at you. They can help you with your food goals, whether that's weight loss or just having convenient meals ready to go. There's 40 options across 8 dietary preferences such as Calorie Smart, Chef's Choice, Protein Plus, or Keto. Factor arrives fresh and fully prepared, perfect for any active, busy lifestyle. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/SOS50off and use code SOS50off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code SOS50off at factormeals.com/SOS50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Talking about team needs, we've seen a coach get a need filled, or a team get a need filled at head coach. The Saints have hired Eagles offensive coordinator Kellen Moore to be their new head coach. Funny path, similar to Sean Payton, as he was the offensive coordinator in Dallas. Now, he went to Philly, then New Orleans, but Sean Payton was once the offensive coordinator in Dallas, who then went on to become the head coach of the Saints. What do you make of this hire? Do you like it? Do you hate it? I think it's okay. I think Kellen Moore's solid. He's got Derek Carr to work with. What do you make of the Kellen Moore Saints hire?
Well, first, I thought the announcement was what a scheme. They announced it the day before the Super Bowl. I'm like, oh, goodness, this is just setting up for the Eagles offense to come out flat. Kellen Moore was distracted about his new position with the Saints and didn't put together. I thought that could have been a potential. And I thought, oh, man, whoever leaked that or put that out there was very intentional. Obviously, that didn't matter. For the Saints job, cool. I don't want to say it. He was their last choice by any means, or that he didn't interview well, or that he can't be a good head coach. I just don't know. I think the offense looked great this year. They won in a multitude of ways, whether they needed to ground and pound with Saquon or whether they needed to kind of air it out with Jalen Hurts a little bit. But yeah, we're going to see how strong Kellen Moore's will is and how much of a culture he can imprint. I think that's one of the questions that a lot of people have about him is he's not the most outgoing guy, or at least that's what it appears on the sideline. He's not the big energy guy. And I could be way wrong on this. These are just the things I see from him on the sideline. So is he a culture building guy, or is he kind of a quiet guy that needs to bring in other guys to, have that juice for him? And what does the rest of his staff look like? And that's also the tough part, is a lot of staffs have been built out already. Who's left to kind of fill some spots?
What I like is it's a coach who's worked with a veteran quarterback, Dak Prescott, and had some success, and now worked with Kellen Moore. I think his experience is going to lead to a better relationship with Derek Carr, another veteran quarterback who's been in the league for a couple of years. I think if anyone's got a shot to work well with Derek Carr, it's a guy with that background who's worked with Dak, who's worked with Jalen, who played in the NFL himself. He's been around for a couple of years. He's not no offense to Ben Johnson or somebody, he's not a coach who, how do I say this? It's a first time head coach, but it's a coach who's worked with a lot of veteran quarterbacks before, which gives me hope and promise.
Did you actually see the interesting thing? Like Kellen Moore and Derek Carr played against each other in college, Boise State versus Fresno State, and Boise State just absolutely beat the piss out of them. And then now Kellen Moore is about to be his head coach.
That's amazing. I did not know that. That's
so
crazy.
He went 23 to 31 for 254 yards passing and 3 touchdowns. Derek Carr had 126 yards passing and 2 interceptions.
What's their age difference? Are they like the same?
I mean, they got to be pretty close within at least a year or two of each other.
Kellen Moore age. Kellen Moore is 36.
He's Derek 36? Wow. I mean, and Derek Carr's 33.
I loved Kellen Moore when I was a kid, man. Derek Carr is 33. So, yeah, man.
He was on the cover of what, like NCAA 08 or something like that?
Something like that. Yeah, one of those. Dude, I loved the Kellen Moore Boise State teams. They were so much fun. I mean, what a journey. This guy has maximized his football experience, to be totally honest, right? Like, he was a really average athlete, didn't have a great arm, still made it to the NFL, leveraged a backup quarterback job into being a quarterback coach, and then offensive coordinator, and then Super Bowl winning offensive coordinator, and then now head coach. I mean, what a really cool, special journey for Kellen Moore. I mean, I think that's not appreciated enough. A guy who, not everyone's Tom Brady. Not everyone has the arm talent to be Mahomes or Josh Allen. And no offense to Kellen Moore, but his path was never to be a top 5 NFL quarterback, but he used that opportunity to get it in the door and then turn it into a job coaching. And that's cool, man. I really admire that a lot.
Yeah, and he was a guy that he played with really high IQ when he was at Boise State. He threw with a lot of anticipation because he didn't have a great arm. Obviously, that arm got exposed in the NFL, and it's part of what I think made it tough for him. but he balled out. I also do want to correct, it was Zambransky that was the '08 cover for NCAA, not Kellen Moore.
Was it 11 though? There was a year where Kellen Moore. Google Kellen Moore NCAA cover.
I can't find it. I'll have to try and keep looking for it when we get off here. But man, but yeah, like you said, he's going to be a guy who's able to work with Derek Carr. Hopefully, find some things that are comfortable for him. I think that Kellen Moore did that with both Dak Prescott and now Jalen Hurts, finding things that made these guys comfortable. I thought this year was the most beneficial year for him to coach because he had a running back who could handle high volume, and it honestly taught him not to abandon the run. I think some of those years in Dallas, he was kind of known for abandoning the run and kind of forgetting that you need to lean on it throughout the course of the game and not just throw it 50 times. So hopefully he's learned over the past couple of years to, lean into that run game a little bit more. He'll have Alvin Kamara. Granted, he is, had a lot of volume on him the past couple of years, but there'll be, some potential. But I think the Saints are, I don't know if tire fire is the word, but there's a lot of things to fix, whether that's the defense, whether that's the rest of the offensive weapons, whether that's a salary cap situation. There's just a lot going on for the Saints that he's going to deal with.
At the same time, though, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Kamara, like there's not no talent there. Is my point, though. Like,
I mean, Olave's got to retire after his next concussion, which could happen at any moment. Shaheed's only good for the deep ball. Valdez-Scantling's only good for the deep ball. Kamara, we haven't seen him be a running back in 4 years now. He's just been a pass catching running back or a little dump off screen guy. Like, there's a lot to get figured out there.
Bigger problem is the offensive line downgrade, in my opinion. Like, you're going from probably the most talented offensive line, and also let's give credit to Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley.
Those are weapons.
Probably the most talented offense on paper, actually, in the NFL to whatever the Saints can put together. So maybe, I mean, the grass isn't always greener. I would have liked to see. I mean, Nick Sirianni was making his pitch like, let's run it back together.
Yeah.
But again, the other problem, though, is what if there's a coach we were just talking about in the pre-show, Bobby Slowick, who he didn't strike while the iron was hot. And he went from head coaching darling to his second year with Houston getting fired. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't mind. Kellen Moore wanted this opportunity. Let's see where it goes. I got an open mind. By the way, I looked it up. He was never on the cover. You're right. It's just Zabransky and you're right. I always thought Kellen Moore too.
It was a different white Boise State quarterback.
Dude, I gotta say, one thing I guess I touched on, but I want to really double down on. I didn't have the self-awareness when I was in high school to realize, like, hey, dude, your playing career is not really going to take you anywhere. What I could have done if I'd had the foresight to say, look, I'm happy to be here. I'm lucky to be here. And I'm going to leverage this into becoming a coach. And I think I could have become a football coach as a profession, and maybe still will someday. I'm still open to that idea. But if I'd been smart, and I'm saying this so that other seniors in high school and other juniors in high school, or even in college, paying attention, can realize you can leverage your opportunity as a player into a coaching career if you just are a good kid who shows up, who works hard, is a leader, does all the little things right. Everything you can control is great. You're in the respect of the coaches around you. Come time for an opportunity to step up, you're the first guy they think of. And I know I could have done that if I'd had that approach and had the foresight to do that. Kellen Moore did look where he landed. And I just encourage other young athletes out there, have that mindset and the self-awareness to realize, hey, man, you're 5'8", you're probably not the next Tom Brady, but you could still be a meaningful person who impacts football in a different way.
Yeah, and approaching that way not only makes you a better teammate, but it just makes you a better human being. It teaches you the discipline of being prepared, and you're going to see that show up in your career, whether that's in football or after that. So, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That self-awareness to, and let's be clear, not self-awareness to cut yourself short on your dream. That's something you should always be pursuing. But there comes a time when everybody knows, and once you do know, if coaching is something that you want to do, dive into that, spend some extra time in the film room, try and understand the offense a little bit better, be better to your own teammates, help holding them accountable. There's a lot of different things you can do.
The next thing I'd like to talk about, if possible, is Deebo Samuel.
Oh man, that was interesting.
What's going on? Tell me more, Nathan, about Deebo Samuel, because it's there's a lot happening there. What's your take on? Lead us in if you want.
Yeah, I think that there was a lot of conversation around the contract before he signed it, right? About is he really worth it? Is he being overpaid? He has some health and availability issues. And they tried to move on from him last offseason. And I think that official, trying to move on from him kind of puts a bad taste in his mouth. Obviously, the season didn't go the way they wanted in San Francisco, and he had a bad year. And I think that maybe it's just time to part ways. I don't think that there's any ill will towards anybody, but I think Deebo is just looking for a change of scenery, perhaps an offense that will. And I don't even know. I feel like that offense catered to him pretty well. I think he's just looking for a change of scenery. Obviously, the Niners have agreed to it. Again, it was clear that last year he wasn't going to be a part of this new iteration. One, because he's expensive, and two, because he's kind of getting a little bit older. Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's time for them to part ways.
Yeah. And then to clarify, Deebo Samuel requested a trade from the 49ers and they granted it. So they're helping him find a trade partner. It's I agree with you. I don't know if there's an offense that's going to cater better to him. Like, you know what team comes to mind?
Don't say Miami.
No, Kansas City, dude. They need a weapon. I don't know how they use him, but I'm sure they could find a way. I'm sure they could figure out a way to maximize his value.
Yeah, I'm sure that they could absolutely find a way.
And that's the kind of creative coach that is going to use him as a running back, as a receiver, as a place, all over the field. I don't know that he wants to be a running back really, but I think they could use him in a lot of gadget fun ways to maximize his potential. I think he wants to win too. I think part of this is money. Part of this is like, it's tough. He's been so close so many times and not gotten over the hump. I would think he wants to win a Super Bowl too. And I wonder what's important to him. Is it money? Is it Super Bowl? Based on the trade, based on what happens, I'm curious where he goes, but I'm curious where you think he's a fit and who should make a move for him.
I think the Commanders would be great. I think Cliff Kingsbury could do a lot of different things with Deebo Samuel. You'd still have De'Ami Brown. You'd still have Terry McLaurin. And I just think that he would be an excellent piece to that offense, not only in the backfield as a runner, right? Because he's got that sort of ability. We've seen that. But again, his ability to be where a quarterback needs him, his run after the catch ability is superb. And that's kind of the offense that Cliff Kingsbury has. It encourages guys to be great run after catch. And I think that could be a great spot for him. And I think the Commanders are also a team that can afford to make that trade.
Yeah. He's 29. He's taken a lot of hits.
He's an old 29.
Yeah.
If there is such a thing, an old 29.
Yeah. I'm curious, does there desire for him? Like, do people want him? Like, I think New England should make a move to get him because they got a lot of cap space and can afford to give him a contract, and they're desperate for any kind of weapon on offense. But a team that's on the margins and really has to count pennies, is he a player really worth pursuing in his age? Is he what kind of weapon is he really? He's kind of unique. He's a hybrid running back. He's not a big, tall, wide receiver. He's been hurt before. Like, I don't actually know what he brings to the table a team would want.
Yeah, I think that's a great question as well, because again, that offense was so well tailored for his game and getting him the ball in space. I'm not sure, what the rest of his skill set looks like as a wide receiver, because it hasn't necessarily been asked of him to be either a number one guy or a true slot guy, because he's just kind of played everywhere and he's a unique playmaker. Again, not to say that he's incapable of doing one or the other. It's just we haven't seen him forced to play one way or the other. I think there's a few other teams that could probably be a great match for him outside of the Washington Commanders. Like you mentioned, the Patriots. It could be interesting, although the Patriots have a history of not quite getting the right receivers with their quarterback over the last few years. So I'd be worried for him. And then also it's going to be hard for teams to get kind of the bad taste out of their mouth that he had this last year. With complaining, be a little bit disruptive in the locker room. It looked like to me he was probably 12 pounds bigger than he probably should have been. And how does he look coming back this year? What kind of shape is he in? And can he stay healthy? So I think all of those factors considered, there's probably going to be fewer suitors than people think. But I also think that there's going to be a lot of GMs that just say, hey, like, what about a 4th-round pick? And just try and see if they can, throw something against the wall and see if it sticks and see how desperate Deebo is to get out and how desperate the Niners are to move on from him.
What about Jacksonville? I know you mentioned Washington. Jacksonville's a similar team that it's got a young quarterback, could use an extra weapon. I guess I just don't. I don't know. I really don't know how valuable Deebo Samuel is. To be totally honest, I think he's like an accoutrement rather than he's sprinkles. He's not the icing. Like you have a cake, and if you have a good chocolate cake with icing, it's good. If you had sprinkles, it's sure a little better, but you really need the frosting to make the cake. It's just cake and sprinkles isn't the same as cake with frosting. I don't know if I'm making sense, but he's not the full thing.
I hear you. I hear you, but he's in the batter for sure. He's in that batter. He lays the foundation in terms of culture prior to this previous year. He brings physicality on the perimeter. He's a great run blocker. He's great after the catch, and he brings a toughness to the wide receiver room that I think any team would appreciate. So you could consider him an accoutrement, but you could make that argument for essentially any wide receiver as being icing on the cake, right? I think he sits somewhere in between icing on the cake and somewhere between a legitimate game changer for a team. Again, it just depends on what he looks like coming back.
I've got a fun idea. I think this
Talk to me.
The team that Deebo Samuel would be fun to watch play for is the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, Deebo receiver. Samuel. He's fun.
He's just a slower Zay Flowers at that point.
No, but I think the physicality.
Baltimore's another team that doesn't know what to do with wide receivers.
But the physicality of him and Derrick Henry, and imagine a backfield of Deebo, Derrick Henry, and Lamar. That's correct, dude. It'd be so fun. Like it just would be so fun to see that, and I think that's my pie in the sky. If I get any wish granted, that's what I want for Deebo Samuel. Because I just, as a football nerd, that'd be really fun to watch a 2 running back set with Lamar and Deebo and Derrick freaking Henry. Like that'd be awesome.
I think he'd be more interesting with the Rams, although they would never trade him in division. You could think about Miami in terms of 1-to-1 going to an offense that's very similar to what they're doing.
He'd be unhappy there, though. He'd complain about Tua losing, and
would he?
I think he would.
Tua gets that ball out quick. Right to him.
How much better is Tua than Brock Purdy, and is he even better? I mean, honestly, like I love Tua, but they're like the same quarterback. I mean, really, like
if you were to ask me who I'd take Tua.
But
actually, you know what?
And is Tua even healthy? Is he even playing that week?
You could ask the same thing about Brock Purdy after this year.
Yeah, you're not wrong. We haven't talked about yet.
Broncos could be interesting. Broncos would be an interesting team. Raiders would be an interesting team.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put the Chargers in the mix. Maybe the Seahawks. No, not the Seahawks.
What about the Bengals?
Depends on if they do or don't have T. Higgins.
Yeah.
I think actually a pairing of Jamar Chase and Deebo would be pretty solid.
I think it'd be interesting. And that might, I don't know. I'm really not sure what's going to happen with Deebo. I don't know what the market is. I think what's going to really happen is some desperate team like the Raiders, who has very little weapons, is going to take a big swing to get him because they're like, well, it's better than having nothing. And it's going to be kind of an ugly fit. That's my fear for Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, that's kind of like when Juju went to the Patriots a couple years ago, right? Like it was back into the market.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just pay him. Anyways.
It's a desperate, ugly fit that I don't think is great.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn got hired as a Jets head coach. I don't know how we haven't talked about this yet, but Aaron Glenn was hired as the head coach of the Jets, and I don't know, man. Another defensive head coach. It seems like we just did this with Robert Saleh. This one's different because he's laying down the law. He's telling Aaron he can't go on Pat McAfee's show, and he's telling this and telling that. And the truth is, I think no matter who the Jets hired, I was going to feel bad about it because the Jets are a bad organization. But I like Aaron Glenn as a person. Like he's a good coordinator, did a good job at the Detroit Lions. It's not personal. I think I just don't trust the Jets organization. What do you make of them hiring Aaron Glenn?
Yeah, I make it out kind of the same way with the Cowboys and with the Saints. Like I'm just not sure. I'm not sure because Sirianni, big personality,
Yeah.
right? Kind of overshadows Kellen Moore. Dan Campbell, big personality, kind of overshadows Aaron Glenn. Now, Aaron Glenn brought that intensity as well. But again, understanding who he is as a head coach will be interesting to see in the staff that he builds. So I'm not saying jury is in or jury's out. Like, yes, I understand he wants to lay down the law and make things clear to Aaron Rodgers. But at the end of the day, it's can he communicate from the top down, across his assistants and position coaches, down to the janitorial staff. Can we get this ship going in the right direction and having everybody feel good about it? And that's what the Jets haven't had in quite a few years.
No,
So yeah,
that makes.
I don't have. It's one of the hires. Like I said, I don't have an opinion on. I'm just curious to see how it turns out.
Is every coach hired? I'm trying to think. The Jets were the last one in my head, but I think it's
Saints
everyone, right?
Saints might have been last. Jags are
Yeah.
covered. Bears are covered.
Yeah. Every coach has been.
Patriots are
The
covered.
Raiders have one. Yeah.
Raiders
okay.
are covered.
We got our full slate for next year, and really we're waiting on free agency and the draft. Those are the next two events in the NFL offseason. That'll be interesting.
It's gonna be big. It's gonna be big.
Oh man,
huge.
That word is ruined, man. It's so funny. Like it really is kind of sad. Like you can't, you know what I mean? It's like you ever play the like Rook?
Wait, Gus Johnson ruined huge?
Oh, it wasn't Gus Johnson. That's all I got.
I knew what I was doing.
Unless there's anything else you want to talk about, like in the game, the card game Rook, there's a trump card, right? And like that game has been tainted forever now. It's like, oh man, like it's just sad. It's like because no matter what you say, someone's gonna have a reaction either direction. Like someone's gonna have some type of way of feeling about it. You know what I mean? It's like,
I forgot to grill Andy Reid. Oh my gosh. What offense was that? There was no response to the pass rush coming straight up field. What about a quick screen to DeAndre Hopkins with Juju Smith-Schuster as your blocker, right? Or you go two with Juju and Xavier Worthy, and then you throw a fake screen in. I felt like they did nothing to stop that pass rush from coming upfield the entire game.
I've got a counter.
I don't want to open that can of worms. But
well, let's dive into the can of worms a little bit because I've got a response, and I to me, the problem was so many of their successful pressures for the Eagles defense. Like the Eagles defense was getting pressure so frequently with a 4-man rush, and that's one of the only things you can't really game plan for because if they blitz, you can run a screen. If you run a screen and no blitz, they got everyone in coverage. You're not really going to have success that way. So like basically the only way to destroy an offense is to have a 4-man rush that's dominating the way it happened. That's what happened when the Patriots played Strahan. That's what happened when Tampa lost to Tampa, or sorry, when Kansas City lost to Tampa a couple of years ago as Nathan's cat. I love this. It's actually really fun. My point I'm getting at though is I just don't know how you scheme against a team that can't block 4 defensive linemen. I just don't think it's a successful formula there.
I also think this is the game that they use. Hold on here.
I love it. She's pretty, man.
She's adorable.
I'm
curious what their percentages of pre-snap motion was as well, because it looked like there was limited movement of guys moving across the formation. And I think if you can use that pre-snap motion to get maybe not even numbers, but at least just leverage on one side, you can still at least throw the screen, right? And then leave your guy one-on-one with a tackler. Even if you have at least take a chance, right? Because again, all you have to do is get that defensive line moving laterally in some way, shape, or form. A jet sweep to Xavier Worthy. I just felt like that there was more that could have been done. Could have been done. I'm not the world's greatest offensive coordinator. The reason I'm sitting here behind this microphone, but at the same time, I felt like there wasn't a concerted effort to be like, okay, they're getting pressure with 4. How do we slow that down? How do we make the D-line think just for a second longer? Because sometimes that's all it takes.
Yeah. No,
anyways, that was all. I don't want to get too deep into it, but I just felt like the offensive game plan, Eagles came out and had something for it, but there was no adjustment
counter.
There was no counter.
Yeah. No, it was I just think it was a physical beatdown. I mean, I one more time want to say I don't know that you can when you're getting dominated up front
It's belt to ass.
No offense is going to work, and it was it was brutal, man.
It's like that. It reminds me of that video of Amon-Ra St. Brown doing the touchdown celebration. I think it's against the Bears, and he's just whooping them. It's hilarious.
Man, that's all I got, dude. Great job. I think it'll be our last long episode for a while. So
Yeah.
I think it'll be warranted occasionally, like when you've got a big free agency or a big draft. But I think it's the last like long, roughly hour-long conversation we're gonna have like this for quite a while. So hope you enjoyed it. I love you
Yes.
guys. Nathan, good job. Anything you want to say in parting?
Remember to have fun.
Always good advice, generally.
Yeah, sometimes life can really bog you down. Work gets stressful, but remember to sit down, smile. Say, I'm going to do a little something for me and have fun. Keep your spirit high.
Are you talking to me or everyone?
I'm talking to everybody. You just you gotta feed your soul sometimes.
I left the house at 5 a.m. this morning, and I got home because I had to go to my future mother-in-law's house for an event real quick, and then I got home around 9. And I get home and Molly's like, "You're home." And I'm like, "I got to record with Nathan." And she goes,
"Yep.
I just saw you the first time." Like, "Oh, even God, it's 5 a.m. You're finally home." And now you're.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess have fun. Find time for fun, guys, is my advice.
Yes.
Play Steam Deck occasionally. It's okay.
Sometimes you got to schedule it too. Schedule yourself some fun.
That's very valid. Well, man, I love you. Good job today. And,
always a pleasure.
We are done.